Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Phil Risher, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing how to get higher profits, more free time, and build the contracting business that you've always dreamed of with Brad Huebner. Thanks so much for joining us today, Brad.
Phil, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. So, Brad is with Hammer and Grind. He's also the author of The Contractor Profit Blueprint, a former Marine and successful construction business owner who has transitioned to coaching contractors to achieve financial freedom and build a business that is successful. His approach focuses on integrity, perseverance, helping clients overcome industry challenges and thrive. So, Brad, can you tell us a little bit, how did you get into the construction trades type of space?
Yeah, it's a long story. In high school, I took architectural drafting. We had what's called T&I classes, so it was like a 3 credit hour class. My senior year in high school, I thought I wanted to be an architect. Turns out you have to have good grades and actually like going to school and all that stuff to be an architect. So that's why I ended up going into the military right out of high school and did that for 4 years. Got out and then. But I don't know, I guess it was maybe about 4 or 5 years later, I had an opportunity to go be a superintendent for a local developer. And that architectural drawing that I had taken, I understood buildings, how they go together, walls, I understood the mechanics of it. And my family's always been kind of a jack of all trades, handy. My dad was a diesel mechanic. If we needed a new roof, we'd put it on. If we needed a fence, we'd build it, that kind of thing. And so I was always handy. And I had the opportunity to go work for him. And then couple different things happened, and I ended up going to work for one of our subcontractors who was a finish carpenter. And so I started doing finish carpentry for him, became his lead guy, did that for about 2 years, and then I ended up starting my own business after that. So that was in 2009 when I started my own business, right in the middle of the housing market
Yeah.
crash. I thought that was the best time to start a construction business. And
Were y'all doing
then
like
I did
remodeling?
that for, what's that?
Were you doing like remodeling or new homes or just anything? Or
I started out as a handyman because
oh,
I had $1,000 in the bank and I had a few tools, and that was really the only thing I could start. When I went to work for the finish carpenter,
yeah,
we were doing new construction. We were building homes, trimming out new homes, and that's like I started working for him, and then we trimmed out one home, and then it was like, oh, by the way, there's no more homes being built,
yeah,
right?
okay,
So we had to like transition to doing remodels. So we
okay,
started doing remodeling, but there wasn't enough work. I mean, I was only working like 20 hours a week.
of
Like I
course,
wasn't getting enough hours, right? And so I was like, man, I could start my own business and like work
yeah,
20 hours a week and make the same. And that's kind of the segue for me starting my own business.
okay,
I mean, if it was busy and we were doing well, I don't know that I would have ever started, at least not then, because I would have been busy. So
yeah,
I started out as a handyman, did that, and then that people was always asking, well, do you do remodels? Do you do bathrooms? Do you do this and this? And so that kind of led into doing remodeling. And so later on, after a few years, I started doing more remodel projects. But then I was still doing handyman stuff. So I kind of ran it like two different divisions, if you will. But I was struggling for a long time, Phil. Like for 9 years in my business, I was getting by. I had increases in revenue every year, but I was never really paying myself enough. I was never really making good money. And I actually found some business coaches. I went online, I was reading books, found some business coaches, and they helped me understand some more of my numbers and stuff. And through that process, I fell in love with the idea of coaching. And then several years later, I had an opportunity to start my own coaching business. And that was really by accident too, but honestly. And then, but it worked out. It was in God's plan. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. And then here we are, 3 years later, doing coaching full time. So that's
yeah.
the long story.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit? So a lot of times I see this as like a handyman, and then it's like, wait a sec, a bathroom is, 5 grand, 10 grand. I should just do those. I'm not going to do this, patch
Yeah.
these walls. Can you talk a little bit about that shift? Because you said it takes 9 years. I think that's a really hard shift for people when it comes to like these bigger ticket, long sales processes, cash flow. It changes
Yep.
the game from a lot of the onesie twosies, mow and go type things to like these big projects. What does that look like for your transition?
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, I know there's handyman companies out there that are doing multiple millions a year in revenue. And then there's remodeling companies doing the same. So it's like, is it a big ticket? Is it a low ticket? If you do low ticket, you're just doing more of them. Now you got to deal with scheduling. You got to deal with all the complexities. If you're doing high ticket, maybe you only got to do 4 jobs a year, right? That removes a lot of the scheduling stuff. It removes a lot of the complexity of multiple projects. You got to kind of pick your poison, if you will.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, and what I learned in my business, and then also what I learned over the years working with other contractors, is generally they offer too many services. And what ends up happening is that there's 1 or 2 services that are really profitable, but then there's, anywhere from 1 to 8 other services that are not as profitable, but they feel like they can't give them up,
Mm.
right? They feel like if they give up these other services, it's not going to work. I was talking to someone yesterday, actually, who was interested in coaching, and he offered 2 different services. And one of them, he's like, well, I make more money doing this other one. I'm like, well, why don't you just do that full time?
Yeah.
He's like, well, because in the wintertime we slow down. And so this other one kind of carries us through the winter. And it's just kind of that mindset of like, you know, I fumbled my way to where I'm currently at. And I don't want to make a major change in my business, like eliminating services or rebranding or changing direction. Even though
Yeah.
stuff's not working, I'm just too afraid to make a major change. And so a lot of guys just stay stuck.
Yeah. I definitely get that. You also mentioned about not making much money. What does that mean, or what should someone be paying themselves, or how did you? It's just like, hey, I wasn't even getting a paycheck, or there was no profit at the end, or what was that feeling, and how did you diagnose that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I obviously where you live matters. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So if you're living in New York or the former LA, because I guess all of it's gone now, but
Yeah.
if you depending on where you live and the cost of living, that's going to change, right? I live in the Midwest. I live in Indiana. It's one of the cheapest
Mm.
parts of the country to live in.
Yeah.
And so, around here, if you're making $100,000 a year, paying yourself 100,000, that's pretty good. I mean, you could have a pretty good life. Now, that's in the last couple of years, inflation has kind of
Of course.
diluted that a little bit. But if you make 100,000 in New York,
Yeah.
that's not very good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, like, it depends. But I, as a business owner, you really should be making, I would say, a minimum. Like, you should be paying yourself a minimum of $100,000 a year as an owner, and then up from there. So whether that's 100, 150, 200,000, obviously depends on the size of your business and how much revenue and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, around here, I had a plumber. He was a one-man show. He did not want employees. He worked whenever he wanted to. He, took off whenever he wanted to, and he made over 6 figures, and he was perfectly happy with that. And so
Yeah.
it really, there's a lot of variances to that.
Yeah, so sounds like, well, first off, if you're not paying yourself a regular paycheck, that's substantial in size, potentially, 70, 80, 90, $100,000, then you probably feel the same way that Brad's explaining. And also, you don't have to live like that. There is a better way that you could structure this. And I think that's what you coach people on. In your book, The Contractor Profit Blueprint, you have 4 steps, I believe.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
are those, or does that kind of help with this process of paying yourself right, doing the right stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So the 4 steps, the first one is one that no one wants to do, but it's the most important one, and that is getting your mindset, fixing your mindset. I call it the 7-figure mindset mastery, right? Like, you have to fix your mindset, because here's the reality of it is, if myself or Phil or anybody, some talking head on the social media is like, you got to raise your prices, and you're like, that's great, that sounds great, I love to raise my prices, but no one's going to pay that much in my area. That's a mindset problem.
Hmm.
Okay, because if you don't believe that you can charge more, then you will never be able to charge more, straight up. If you're, even if you're like, I'm going to try it, Brad, you said to raise my prices, I'm going to try it, and so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to, a project that I would normally charge 20 grand, I'm going to charge 25 grand, I'm going to add $5,000 to it. But in the back of your mind, you're talking to the customer and you're getting ready to tell the customer it's 25,000, and you're like, man, there's no way they're going to pay this, it's too much. And and you kind of squeak it out. Yeah, it's probably maybe somewhere around 25,000. Like, they're not buying that. They're not catching it. There's no confidence. They don't believe it. And then you're going to basically sabotage yourself in that process. So mindset is the most important thing that we got to get right first. It's the foundation, if you will. The second thing is pricing for big profits. That's where it's actually about how you price your jobs, right? Making sure that you're getting the correct markup on your jobs. And I always talk about getting a 50% gross profit, which equals 100% markup, right? So your COGS, your total cost of goods sold, your labor and materials, equipment, rentals, trash, all that stuff times two is going to give you a 50% gross profit at the end. And that scares a lot of people. Just, I mean, straight up, that scares a lot of people. But there's a second part of this equation with the pricing that most contractors get wrong, and that is they don't use a full burden labor when
Mhm.
they're figuring their labor rates. So if I'm talking to someone and they go, well, I got 3 employees, John makes $30 an hour and Chris and Tom make $25 an hour. And that's what they figure. I mean, they may add in FICA because they know they got to add taxes and stuff. So maybe they're charging $32 and $27. They add $2 an hour to cover that. But what they're not taking into consideration is uniforms, cell phone reimbursement, vehicles. If the lead guy's driving a company vehicle, the gas, the payments, the insurance, the maintenance. But even beyond that, here's one that no one ever takes into consideration, Phil. Your weekly meetings, any kind of meetings that you have that
Mhm.
are non-billable.
Yeah,
So if you have one 1 hour meeting every week, that's 52 hours a year that you're not billing a client for,
that's right.
right? And so if you're paying someone $30 an hour, right, times 52 weeks,
Yeah,
that's you're not making that money back.
that's right.
So you have to factor in, lost time due to meetings. If you send them to training, if you send them to some kind of industry standard training for a week, you're not billing during that time. Like all of these costs are not being associated. And so you have a $30 an hour employee who's really costing you like $42, $45 an hour, and you're only billing the customer or figuring your labor burden at say $32 an hour. Now all of a sudden you're losing anywhere from $5 to $10 per hour of unrealized profits because you're not even factoring it into your costs.
That's right. And literally even building in profit into what you're actually charging on top of that. Because a lot of times people just say, oh, it's $30, oh, it's $40 for this $10 gap. They don't think about
Yeah.
the structure, the burden rate, and actually what it's going to cost you and the profit side of things.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of nuance and complexities. We can talk about, uh, your burn rate or your overhead recovery and all these different things that go into that. But I like to kind of keep it simple. I like the KISS method, keep it as simple as possible. If you just get your labor burden correct, I have a worksheet that's available, but it's called the labor burden worksheet. You literally put in all of these things and it spits out what it costs you to, for your team and stuff. You get
Nice.
your labor burden right, and then you get your markup correct, you'll have enough profits. Like you will be making good money, right? It's no longer the situation where you're making okay money. You got to wait to close this job and you're going to make a couple $1,000s profit. It's like now all of a sudden you're making an extra five, six, seven, 10, $20,000 profit on a job. And in one or two jobs, it completely changes the trajectory of your business.
Yeah,
So the second thing is getting your pricing right. Real quickly, the third one is accelerate your sales. That's really a combination of marketing and sales. We get your marketing right, so you're getting the good quality leads. And then the sales process is one of the most important things that I teach in my program. But it's eliminating people who are not going to hire you in the first place. We don't do free estimates. No more free estimates ever again. Stop wasting your time and giving it away for free. And we eliminate on average, most of my clients will eliminate about 10 hours per week of wasted time on sales leads that would never convert no matter what they do, right? So we're eliminating time. And so right there is part of the freedom formula. Like you're going to all of a sudden you're going to have like an extra 5 to 10 hours a week of more time.
that's
You're
right.
like, "Oh man, I got all kinds of time now." So that's the third thing, and then the fourth thing, and this is on purpose. The fourth thing is systems for growth and freedom, okay? We don't work on systems until we get our pricing right. And this is I see a lot of contractors get this wrong because they don't get the pricing right.
Yep.
And so how do you grow your business? Well, I'm only making $5 an hour off of my helper Johnny. and I'm not making enough money. So what do I got to do? I got to hire more people, right? I got to hire more people. I got to bring on more crews. I got to do more jobs. I got to do more. And that's not the right way to do it. Like,
Right.
you have to be profitable. Even if you're a one man show or you have a helper or 3 employees, you have to be profitable where you're at now. And once you're making the money, then you work on systems. Then you can start building. And here's the beauty of it, Phil. You actually have money available that you can invest in the systems. Now you can get a software to help you out. Now you can buy tools. You can invest in a trailer or whatever it is that you need. You actually have money available now because you're profitable. And that's why we do it last. It's usually people want to play the efficiency game. This is a lie I believe, by the way, and then I'll shut up after this, Phil. The lie
Oh,
I
you're good.
believed is that the only way you make more money is to be more efficient. That's the
Mm,
only way. Like, you have to be more efficient. I used
yeah,
to believe that everyone, somewhat charged the same amount. I mean, vary it, but like, maybe $2 or $3 more an hour or something. But you just do more jobs and you're more efficient. If I could do a job in 2 hours that takes you 8 hours, I'm going to make
that's right.
more money. That was the lie I believed. And so, I ended up with like 40 grand worth of tools sitting in a warehouse that I would use twice a year because I believed that the efficiency of that tool was going to make me more money. And
Mm,
so that's just one of the lies that I see. So
yeah.
I'll stop talking now.
No, but it makes sense. Before you go and you try to scale your company, you need to make sure that you have a profitable, scalable model that can scale, because that's gonna hurt in the long run. But before we talk about that, I want to pinpoint this because I know when you said this, people's ears perked up. You said no more free estimates. So
Yeah.
so what does that look like? How do you charge for your estimates before you go out there? Like, what does that look like? Because people are like, oh, well, that's my whole business. I go out on free estimates and then I give them an estimate.
Yeah, so this is, like I said, this is the bread and butter of what I teach, and it's not something. I mean, I can't teach you the entire process, in a 30-minute podcast. However, the main premise, and I will admit, there's a little bit of clickbaitiness in that, in saying no more free estimates. We are pre-qualifying people over the phone before we ever go to their house to make sure that, one, they're qualified, lead,
Hmm.
meaning, like, I can run out there and jump circles and do all kinds of fancy stuff for you. But if you need the project done in 2 months and I'm booked out for 6 months, I'm not getting the job. Like, there's nothing I can do to make that happen. Right.
Right, right.
So I can eliminate any kind of time restraints. And then I can eliminate the biggest thing, which is the budget. If you want a $50,000 project and you only have $25,000 to spend, there's some realities there that are not aligned. And so, we need to address that before I go out there and,
Yeah.
spend a bunch of time talking to you and wasting time. So basically, it's just pre-qualifying people over the phone before we go out there. And then, yes, I teach my clients to charge a consultation charge because really that's what you're doing. You are consulting with them. You are,
Yeah.
giving them ideas. I mean, if all you do is show up and whip out your tape measure and measure two things and then write down an estimate, then you're not really giving them any value. I mean, that is truly just giving them a free estimate. But we all know that when you go out and talk to a client, they start asking you questions. What's the best material for this, or how should we do this, or you have any ideas on how to do this over here, and now we're consulting, and you should get paid for that because you're providing real value. So the whole no more free estimates is really about eliminating the people who are never going to hire you, right? I
Yep.
mean, there's people out there that just need 3 estimates to turn into insurance.
Exactly.
They already got their buddy who's going to do the job. He just needs 2 more estimates to turn in. There's nothing that you're going to do to win that job. It's impossible. I can eliminate those. I can eliminate the time people. I need it done next week. It's a 4-week project. I need it done next week. I can eliminate those people. I can eliminate the people that have not even a remotely close realistic budget. So I can eliminate a lot of these people that are never going to be good clients. And that leaves, a smaller percentage of people. I may not get the job because I'm still a little bit too, overpriced or whatever, but I have a lot better chance. Like,
Makes
I've
sense.
I've narrowed it down to a better pool of leads, And then the final thing is like charging for consultations. And that's where the rubber really meets the road, because if I'm charging someone 250, 500, $2,500 to come out there and meet with them, and they're willing to pay that, then they're serious. Like the job's pretty much already sold. At
Yeah.
that point, it's just getting the final numbers together. So that's what that is. But there's a whole sales system that goes behind that allows you to do it, and that's the more complex part of it.
That is awesome. And I think people listening, that you need to really consider the amount of time that you're spending running free estimates and just running all over God's green earth trying to pump out estimates, because it's more about the pre-qualification and getting in front of good quality leads, not just going out on any single lead that you can. Could you give us like 2 or 3 questions to pre-qualify? You mentioned about like what's your time frame question. Do you
Mhm.
like bracket? Hey, so in your area for a new kitchen is usually X to X, kind of thing? Or do you ask them a budget, or how does that conversation go? And then are there any other like just boilerplate type of questions for qualifying?
Yeah, so in the book, there's 9 questions that we
Oh,
ask.
okay.
But to answer your question, don't ever, and if anybody takes anything from this podcast, don't ever, ever, ever ask people what their budget is.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how am I supposed to know then what their budget? I'm glad you asked, Phil.
Yeah.
The reason, the way you do it
Perfect.
is you tell them a ballpark.
Yeah.
You give them an idea. And I like to equate this to like playing poker. If you and I were playing poker, we're on the last betting cycle, the flops down, we're going to bet. And you're like, I don't know, does Brad have a good hand? He seems kind of confident and stuff. Then I say, hey, Phil, guess what? I'm going to show you my cards. I show you my hand before you bet. How confident would you be to bet now once you know what I have, right?
Of course.
You'd have 100% confidence. So what we're doing whenever we give people a ballpark estimate is like showing them our cards.
Hmm.
Because what does every client think if they tell a contractor what their budget is? I'm sure you know this. What is it that everyone thinks?
Yeah. Oh, well, now they know, what they can come in at, or how they can, what it's not right, but that's the kind of the game that they're trying to play.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I say, well, my budget's $30,000, and you really could have done that project for 25, then
Exactly.
guess what? You're going to be like, oh, hey, 30,000. That's exactly what the budget was. You know what that's going to like. That's what everybody thinks, whether it's true or not. That's just what people think. So we just eliminate all of that and just simply say, we go through a process, but when we get to the investment portion of it, it's like, I got all this information, blah 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 blah. Is it okay if I share with you what something like this might cost you, or is it okay if I share with you what other clients have invested in similar projects?
Mm,
Some kind of language like that. Of course, you're going to say yes because everyone wants to know.
yep.
And then I can put some little disclaimers on there, and I could say, well, depending on how nice we go, if we go HGTV cover magazine, just, I like to use the word blow both your socks off. If we just come in there and blow both your socks off, this project, could be as much as $50,000. But if we come in and we're a little more conservative, maybe we only blow one of your socks off. We can come in around the $30,000 price point. Which one of those conversations should we be having?
Yeah. And then it leaves it up to them, and then they'll say, no, well, that's way out of my budget, or this one's
Yeah,
good.
way out of your budget. Yeah, well, I mean, I hear that all the time. How much were you hoping to spend?
Yeah,
Now you're going to tell me your budget because I showed you my cards. I said it was going to be 30 to 50.
that's right.
You have no reason to lie to me now as to how much you actually want to spend,
Yeah,
right?
makes complete sense. And then
Yeah,
how
and
do
so
you oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, so if you said, well, my budget was, 22,000, now I have information now, like, on the low end, I'm around 30. They're at 22. We got an $8,000 gap we got to try and close in now. Now at least I know where you're at,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And I could determine like, well, we can get down to 22, but we're going to have to remove a few things from the scope. Like you mentioned that you really wanted to have heated tile floors. We could take that out, and that's definitely going to save a few $1,000s. And when you start removing scope about what they want, now like, well, wait a minute, no, that's not. I actually want those things. And then before you know it, that $22,000 budget creeps up to that 30, 35, whatever it might be.
that's right. Yeah, it makes complete sense. I mean, I think when you position yourself one as the expert, you don't want the prospect telling you how much something costs. You're the expert. You need to tell them how much it should be. That right there builds the authority part of it. And then how do you shift to the next phase of like, okay, for this to come out and do an analysis or whatever, it's going to cost $500. Is it like to put together an estimate, or what does that sound like?
Yeah, that's where a lot of people get tripped up. And I
Yeah.
always tell people when they first get in, I'm like, hey, don't start charging right away,
Okay.
because you can lose a perfectly good lead in a job because you don't do it the right way. You do have to kind of practice this and actually understand. But when we're on the call, and if you were a customer and we were talking, and we got the timeline down and we got the budget, we're in the budget range, everything's lining up, we're gelling really good. The next question I might ask is, and this, by the way, this isn't one of the 9 questions, but it's just a question I would ask, is like, Phil, it sounds like we're good on timeline, we're good on the budget. I mean, where do you think we should go from here?
Mm.
I'm giving you the range. I'm giving you the decision making power here.
Yep.
Okay. And then you're going to be like, well, I think we'd like to have you come out and give us an estimate. That way we know exactly what it's going to cost and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, perfect. I'd love to come out there. Now, we do, whenever we come out there and do a consultation with you, we do have a small investment up front of X.
Yeah.
That does get credited back to the invoice, once we move forward. But I just wanted to let you know that we do have a small investment up front.
Yeah.
It's just confidently, and you say it. Now, that's just one variation of it. The one thing it's about sales that I'll add here, Phil, is that sales is not a linear process. So I'm very skeptical of anybody who's selling you a sales program where it's like scripted step by step and follow these things and you're going to have sales is not linear. If I'm dealing with a D personality from the disc profiles, if I'm dealing with a D versus an I, S, or C, those are 4 different personalities and they all negotiate and talk differently.
Yeah.
And so if I don't know this and I don't get real sales training, it's going to be a little more difficult. I may be able to really easily close one type of people group or one type of personality because I gelled with them really well.
Yeah.
But the other 2 or 3, I have a hard time closing because I don't understand how to talk to them. So one of the things that I teach with my clients is not like follow these scripts. Now, we do have the questions, and those are just like calibrated questions, but it's more along the lines of learning how to have an emotional conversation with people and then communicating with them really well. And so that's really where the sales magic happens.
Yeah. And I can see with the mindset side of things, it's such a big mindset shift of the confidence and
Yep.
not feeling like, oh my gosh, is the person, can they pay this, or is this too much, or even feeling like bad about charging them, quote unquote, more or something. It's so much in how much you believe in what you're doing and helping people.
I was a guy, like my first coach that I ever hired was a mindset coach
Oh, wow.
to eliminate a bunch of limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt. I love my dad. I love him to death, but he is a penny pincher. I mean, that dude, he could sell snow to Eskimos. Like
Yeah.
I mean, he is just, if he's not getting an extraordinary deal, he's not doing it. And so that's kind of how I grew up. Everything's got to be a deal. Matter of fact, when I told him when I started my business, and I told him this was in 2009. I said I'm going to be charging $40 an hour, for my handyman stuff. I was going to charge $40 an hour. He's like, you can't charge that much. You're ripping people off. Like that was the
Yeah.
response there, right? And so I had a lot of head trash, a lot of negative beliefs around money, and I see it all the time. I actually had a call last week with another partnership contractors, and the one guy's like, I just have a hard time charging more because I feel like I'm taking advantage of them. Right. And
Yeah.
I said, well, that's because you're bidding with your pocketbook.
Yeah.
You're not bidding with the client's pocketbook. You're bidding with your pocketbook.
That's right.
So because you wouldn't pay that much money for something,
That's right.
then you automatically assume that everyone else wouldn't want to pay that much money. But I guarantee you there are people out there that were willing to pay because for them, the money is the least valuable currency they have. The
Mhm.
people that are willing to pay money, they value time and energy and,
Quality.
easiness and comfort over the money itself.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And a lot of times there's a really good book called Thou Shall Prosper. And it's it's a religious type of book, but basically, it's about that, like, you are built, you are made, you're given these gifts to be able to prosper, and it's okay to prosper. It's not a bad thing. And on top of that, to your point, people value time and quality and other things, and the money is just one part of that equation. It's not the only part of the equation. And even if you were to ask them, hey, is every kitchen remodeled the exact same? No. Is there better quality? Is there better material? Is there better time? Is there better communication? Is there better? All this stuff goes into it that justifies costing more or less.
Absolutely. And so there's always room and wiggle room and stuff. And I one of the things I always the visualization I like to paint is when we're having a conversation with a client, I mean, usually over the phone, sometimes if it's in person, but it's like we're sitting on the same side of the table
Yeah.
as they are, and we got our arm around them, and we're like, hey, let's figure this out together. Let's figure out how to get you what you want, at the budget that you can afford. Let's work on this together. But what a lot of contractors do is they treat it like it's an interrogation. They're sitting across the table, and
Yeah.
it's like, they answer the phone. Brad's contracting, and like, oh yeah, Brad, I'd like to get an estimate on a bathroom remodel, and the contractor's like, well, I'll just tell you right now, we're booked out for 6 months. So if you don't, if you want anything sooner than that, then don't even bother. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or
Yep.
it's like, well, we only work with premium stuff. So what's your budget? Like
Yeah.
that's not sales, guys. That's an interrogation.
Yeah.
You think you're saving yourself time, and you actually are, because what you're doing is scaring away perfectly good clients.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go do an estimate for them because you just scared them away. But that's not sales at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you need to invite these people into your ecosystem. You're the expert. They're calling you. Have compassion and empathy, and hopefully help them. So with the mindset, and then getting your pricing right, and then sales, and then the systems. When it comes to the systems, what does that look like? Does that mean, like, documenting all your processes, running EOS or something like that, or what does this sound like or look like to actually, you got all this set up? How does you scale it?
Yeah, systems is funny, or it's interesting rather, because I've never met two businesses that have the exact same systems. So again, this is one of those things where I'm a cautious when someone's like trying to sell them the system in a box, where it's
Yes.
like, here, get my system and then to run your whole business. I'm like, that's not, I don't see in any way how that would actually work. I'm a big systems guy. I'm a big tech nerd. I love technology, softwares. I probably have way more software and automations than I actually need, but I love all that. So, I've used and tested out like 5 different project management softwares in my own business and stuff. And so it's the thing with systems is it's really more about documenting how you do things, like your process,
Yeah.
and that is a system. So if I say, this is how we hook up a trailer, I got new people coming in, like, this is how we hook up the trailer. We do this, and we put the
Yeah.
chains and we cross them or don't cross them, or put the hooks backwards or forward, whatever it is that you want them to do. But the next iteration of that is I can take a video. I can just get a video, and I can just talk to the video. It's a 1 minute video. It's like, here's how we hook up the trailer. We do this, and this. This is how we expect it every time. Now I take that video, and you can do things like create QR codes and stick a QR code on the trailer. So like you get a sticker of a QR code, and stick it to the trailer tongue. And now when you got a new guy who you hire, and he's like, hey boss, how do we hook up a trailer? Or you say, go hook up a trailer. Well, how do you do it? Just go scan it. And they
Yeah.
take out their phone, they scan it, they watch a 1 minute video. It shows them exactly how to do it. Now I don't have to go out there and waste my time or my lead guy's time to go out there and show them how to do that. Does it take a lot of time to create? Yes, it does. But if you think about it, like, how long, if I went out to hook up a trailer and I just had somebody with a camera, it may take me an extra couple minutes, right? Like literally a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But now I never have to do that again. And
Exactly.
so now that's in forever, there. And then every time you do something, you just document it. And then eventually, over a period of time, you'll have a system in place that allows you to remove yourself from all of the daily, you know, what do we do next? What do we do next? I got this problem. How do we solve it? What do we do next? And so really it's more about documenting your daily activities than it is about having this crazy software and all those things that do everything for you.
Yeah. I think that systems are extremely hard in construction, trades, home service type of space because there's so many variables that things pop up. And it's also like, well, my tech's out in the field and I'm on the phone with them, and how do I document this? And your point exactly is like, the more that you can record and then turn into a QR code, or even take that transcript and plug it to ChatGPT and get an SOP out of that, or something that's streamlined, is better than nothing, and it can help you scale
Yes.
significantly to have like a basic handbook or something for people to use.
Here's what I'll tell you about systems, and I talk about this in the book, and that is you need to create a first rough draft.
Mm,
Now I'm speaking to the craftsman out there, okay? Because I know if you're listening to this, I know exactly what you're thinking. One of the most complex systems to fix in your business is the estimating system. Like
mm,
most guys I know hate doing estimates. It takes forever. It's hours and hours. That's another reason why we don't do free estimates, by the way, because you can get paid for doing them.
yeah,
But you don't sit down. You don't like wake up on a Monday and be like, okay, today is the day I'm gonna create a system for my estimating. That's not how it works. Like you're going to have multiple iterations of this. You're going to do things. It's not going to work. You're going to change it. It's going to take a long time. So what we do is a first rough draft. It's just sit down and write down like the top 5 things that you have to do in that thing. So let's say you're trying to create a system for putting up plastic and protection at a house. Like you're doing a bathroom remodel and you're going to put up plastic walls and put out runners and all these different things that protect the client's house. Well, you don't sit down and like think about everything that you need to do. You just say like, what's the main things here? Like, what's the top level? And then you go, okay, well, the first thing is like putting up plastic walls. Well, and then I go and I say, well, what needs to happen for us to do that? Well, we got to have poles, or we got to have tape, or we got to have
yeah,
plastic. Okay, well, before we get there, how do we get the poles, the tape, and the plastic? Well, it's got to be in the trailer. Okay, so now we got to make sure that we have them in the and so like it starts revealing all of these things. So let's say you have a rough draft, and now you're ready to deploy it. You go out to the field. You say, guys, we're gonna use this new system I created for putting up plastic. And the first time you use it, it like the guys are like, well, this doesn't work. You forgot to put on here, this and this, or we need to add this.
exactly.
And so now you're putting it to the test, and then you're finding what doesn't work, and then you go back and you refine it. And then you do that again, and then you refine it, and then you do it again. And eventually you'll have the perfect process for anybody who comes in. They'll know exactly how to put up plastic and, dust protection and all that stuff. And then you'll never have to teach it again.
Yeah, I think that that is so critical to go through, like, soup to nuts, start from the beginning, work your way backwards, figure out the things that you need. One big thing that we've been doing a lot lately and encouraging our clients is, because a lot of people, they're not going to go on Word and try to type up this thing and put bullets and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like get on a Zoom or your phone and just record yourself as if a new person was to ask you, how do I do this? And then just tell them, and then take that transcript and put the ChatGPT, and then
Yep.
it's going to put all the bullet points and make it look nice for you. And you don't have to type it out or anything. You can just talk as if you were to talk to a new employee. It's a great way to streamline that entire process pretty quickly.
I love it. Yeah, there's so much technology out now with AI and ChatGPT and all that. You can definitely streamline this even more. I mean, you can just go on ChatGPT and be like, "Hey, give me a process for putting up plastic," and it'll get you 90% there.
Yeah, there you
You
go.
know,
That's true.
you don't even have to do all that. Here's the other thing too: is like you don't have to be the one that creates all the systems and
Mhm.
processes in your
That's a good
business.
point.
You
Yeah.
can have your
Who
employees do it. I could have
yeah,
if I have an office manager, and let's say one of her responsibilities is to put uh, you know, payments that we receive into QuickBooks. I could just go to my office manager and say, "Hey, Michelle, can you get on Loom and just record the process that you do to put the check into the QuickBooks and record it?"
yeah,
And now I have a Loom recording that I can just put into a database somewhere and be like, if I need to hire a new office manager or whatever, or replace it, she's sick or whatever. Now I could just say, watch that video on here's how we do checks. So it doesn't
yeah,
have to be me doing all that.
yeah. Really great point. Well, man, I could talk to you all day about different things. So,
I could too.
yeah. So, if someone feels stuck, or they're not at the profitability that they feel like they should be, or they're not sure how to scale their business, I'm guessing from our conversation, those are good people to reach out to you. Where should they go? What should they do? If they want to get this labor burden rate calculator, where do they go for that? What's the next steps on this?
Yeah, so the labor burden calculator, I charge a little bit for that because it is quite involved. They can get that
Okay.
on my website. They just go to hammerandgrind.com. It is available there. But there's other
Okay.
ways you can get it too. If you're interested in my book, what you're talking about, the contractor profit blueprint, you can go to the website, thecontractorprofitblueprint.com. You can buy an ebook version or you can upgrade to a paper book, and then there's some bonuses in there. There's also some other options where you can get the labor burden worksheet as well, but it's included in some of the things that are in there. And then what I wanted to do for your listeners, Phil, is that we can do a coupon code where they can get the ebook for free.
Oh, cool.
So the ebook's $7, but I'll just give you a $7 coupon. You can get the book for free, and we'll just make it the we can just make it flash as the coupon code
Cool.
PHLASH. That's the coupon code. They use that, and then they can get it for free.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, thank you. I mean, if you listen to podcasts, you probably read books and you're interested in getting educated. So that would be a great first step. What about your coaching stuff? They can go through that process, go to your website and learn about coaching as well.
Yeah, you can do that. I don't have a ton of information. I know this sounds crazy. I don't have a ton of information on my website about the Profit Club or the one-on-one coaching that I do, and that's because I don't just let anyone in. I actually
Mm.
want to have a conversation with you first to make sure that I can even help you. And so I like that. You can schedule a call right from my website.
Okay,
You can
cool.
just schedule a call with me, and then we'll look at your business, and I'll share with you, which options are available, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, it's been great chatting with you and look forward to keeping in touch and good stuff. Thank you.